The marriage counselor's business card was still tucked behind my credit cards when I decided to surprise Marta with the most romantic Christmas proposal of our 24-year marriage. Pretty pathetic, right? Nick Carpenter, 41 years old, senior copywriter at Henderson & Associates, planning to propose to his own wife like some lovesick teenager. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. But that's exactly what I was doing on this frigid December morning, standing in Tiffany's like an idiot, staring at a diamond bracelet that cost more than my car payment. The sales associate, a perfectly manicured woman named Stephanie, smiled at me with the kind of practiced warmth reserved for middle-aged men having midlife crises. "She's going to love it," Stephanie assured me, sliding the velvet box across the counter. "Anniversary?" "Christmas surprise," I said, my voice cracking slightly. "We're spending it at her parents' estate in Wisconsin. I'm planning to ask her to renew our vows." Stephanie's smile faltered for just a moment. Something in her expression made my stomach clench, but I pushed the feeling away. I was being paranoid. The marriage counseling sessions had made me hypersensitive to every sideways glance, every pause in conversation. The truth was, Marta and I had been struggling, not fighting exactly, but drifting. She'd been working late more often, taking mysterious phone calls that she'd end abruptly when I entered the room. Our conversations had become polite exchanges about schedules and household maintenance. The passionate woman I'd married, the creative director who could sell ice to Eskimos and make me laugh until my sides hurt, had been replaced by a distant stranger who looked at me like I was a piece of furniture she was considering replacing. Hence the marriage counselor. Hence this desperate romantic gesture. My phone buzzed as I walked to my car, juggling the Tiffany bag and my coffee. Ross, my 22-year-old son, had texted from grad school. "Dad, tried calling Mom about Christmas plans. She's not answering. Everything okay?" I stared at the message, that familiar knot tightening in my chest. Marta had been impossible to reach lately. Always in meetings, always dealing with some crisis at the agency. When I'd mentioned the Wisconsin trip to her last week, she'd barely looked up from her laptop. "Sure, whatever you think is best, Nick," she'd said, her fingers never stopping their frantic typing. "You know I trust your judgment." Trust my judgment. When was the last time she'd actually asked for my opinion about anything that mattered? I drove to Henderson & Associates, our advertising agency housed in a gleaming downtown Minneapolis high-rise. The December wind cut through my coat as I hurried across the parking garage, and I found myself looking forward to the familiar chaos of campaign deadlines and client demands. Work was the one place where I still felt competent, where my sarcastic wit and ability to craft compelling copy actually mattered. The elevator doors opened on the 15th floor, revealing the open-concept workspace that our creative director, my wife, had designed 2 years ago. All glass and steel and motivational quotes painted on exposed brick walls. Creativity is intelligence having fun. Great ideas don't care where they come from. The usual corporate inspiration porn. "Nick," Victoria Hartwell waved me over to her desk near the windows. Victoria had been Marta's closest friend since college, an account manager with perfectly styled blonde hair and a talent for office gossip that bordered on supernatural. She was also one of the few people at the agency who still treated me like a human being rather than just Marta's husband. "How's the Christmas shopping going?" she asked, her voice carrying that sing-song quality that meant she was fishing for information. "Almost done," I said carefully. Victoria's friendship with Marta meant anything I said would be analyzed and reported back within hours. "Looking forward to the Wisconsin trip. Marta seems excited about seeing her parents." Victoria's perfectly plucked eyebrows rose slightly. "Wisconsin? I thought she was going to Aspen with the Turnbull account team for that strategy retreat." The Tiffany bag suddenly felt heavy in my hand. "Strategy retreat?" Oh! Victoria's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes wide with manufactured surprise. Maybe I misunderstood. You know how these work trips blend together. I'm sure it was nothing important. But her expression said otherwise. Victoria lived for moments like this, when she could drop a conversational bomb and watch the fallout. The Turnbull account was handled by Jake Turnbull himself, the agency's golden boy account executive. 43 years old, divorced, drove a Porsche, and had the kind of confident swagger that made clients throw money at him and made other men want to punch him in the face. I should get to work, I mumbled, backing away from Victoria's desk. Nick, she called after me. I'm sure it's nothing. Marta's been so busy with year-end campaigns. We all have. I made it to my cubicle. Yes, the senior copywriter got a cubicle while account executives like Jake got corner offices, and sat down heavily in my chair. My computer screensaver showed a family photo from last summer's vacation. Marta, Ross, our 20-year-old daughter Amelia, and me at a cabin in northern Minnesota. We all looked happy. Marta's arm was around my waist, her head tilted toward mine, her smile genuine and warm. When was the last time she'd smiled at me like that? I pulled out my phone and scrolled through our recent text exchanges, grocery lists, schedule confirmations, reminders about Ross's graduation ceremony. Nothing personal, nothing that suggested we were anything more than roommates managing a household together. The Tiffany box seemed to mock me from my desk drawer. What kind of pathetic fool buys expensive jewelry for a woman who might be planning a work retreat with another man? Carpenter! Dave Millant's voice boomed across the office. Our creative director, not to be confused with Marta, who was a creative director but technically reported to Dave, was a heavy-set man in his 50s who wore vintage band t-shirts under expensive blazers and had strong opinions about everything from font choices to foreign policy. I walked over to his glass-walled office, where Dave was reviewing layouts for a restaurant chain campaign. I need you to punch up this copy, he said, sliding a mock-up across his desk. The client wants more emotional connection, whatever the hell that means. I studied the layout, my mind automatically shifting into work mode. This was what I was good at, taking a client's vague demands and turning them into words that made people want to buy things they didn't need. How about every meal tells a story? What's yours? I suggested. Then we build the campaign around family moments, date nights, celebrations. Make it about the memories, not the food. Dave's face lit up. That's exactly what I'm talking about. You've got that magic touch, Nick. Marta's lucky to have you as a creative partner. Creative partner. Right. When was the last time Marta had asked for my input on anything? These days, she seemed to prefer collaborating with Jake Turnbull on everything from client presentations to those mysterious late-night strategy sessions. I spent the rest of the morning working on the restaurant campaign, but my mind kept drifting to Victoria's comment about Aspen. A strategy retreat over Christmas? What kind of strategy required Jake and Marta to disappear to a ski resort during the holidays? At lunch, I did something I hadn't done in years. I drove to Marta's favorite coffee shop, the little place near our house where she used to meet clients when she wanted a more casual atmosphere. I told myself I was just grabbing a sandwich, but really I was hoping to run into her, to have one of those spontaneous conversations that used to happen all the time when we were younger. The barista, a college-aged girl with purple hair, recognized me immediately. Hey, Mr. Carpenter, haven't seen you in forever. The usual? Just a coffee today, I said. Has Marta been in lately? The girl's expression shifted slightly. Yeah. She was here yesterday with that guy from her work, the one with the fancy car. My chest tightened. Jake? I think so. They seemed pretty intense. Lots of whispering and looking at papers. Very hush-hush. She leaned closer, lowering her voice. Between you and me, it looked more like a date than a business meeting, but I'm sure it was just work stuff, right? I managed a weak smile. Right. Just work. But as I drove back to the office, my hands gripping the steering wheel, I couldn't shake the image of Marta and Jake huddled together in our coffee shop, whispering secrets I wasn't allowed to hear. That evening, I sat in our living room pretending to watch television while Marta worked on her laptop at the kitchen table. This had become our routine, parallel lives intersecting only when necessary. The Christmas tree I'd put up the weekend before stood in the corner, its lights blinking cheerfully at a room full of silence. "How was your day?" I asked during a commercial break. "Busy," she replied without looking up. "Year-end crunch, you know how it is." Victoria mentioned something about an Aspen trip. Marta's fingers stopped typing for just a moment. "What about it?" "I thought we were going to Wisconsin for Christmas." "We are." Her voice was carefully neutral. "The Aspen thing is a work retreat. Strategy planning for next year. It's not over Christmas." "When is it?" Another pause. "I'm not sure yet. Dave's still working out the details." Dave, our creative director, who had spent the morning praising my work and making no mention of any Aspen retreat. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. "Which accounts are involved?" "Nick." Marta finally looked up, her expression somewhere between irritated and exhausted. "Why the interrogation? It's a work trip. You know how these things go." But I didn't know. In 24 years of marriage, through all the business trips and client dinners and late-night campaign emergencies, Marta had never been evasive about work. She used to come home energized, full of stories about difficult clients and creative breakthroughs. Now she treated her job like classified information. "I'm just trying to understand our schedule," I said. "Ross and Amelia are both planning to be in Wisconsin for Christmas. I want to make sure we're all on the same page." Marta's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, and her entire demeanor changed. Her shoulders relaxed. A small smile played at the corners of her mouth, and she looked more animated than she had in months. "I need to take this," she said, already standing up. "Work emergency." She disappeared into our bedroom, closing the door behind her. I could hear the murmur of her voice through the walls, but couldn't make out words. What I could hear was the tone, warm, engaged, almost flirtatious. The way she used to talk to me. I muted the television and strained to listen, feeling like a spy in my own home. After 20 minutes, the bedroom door opened. "I have to go back to the office," Marta announced, already grabbing her coat and keys. "Crisis with the Morrison campaign." "At 8 o'clock at night?" "You know how it is in this business, Nick. Clients don't care about normal hours." She kissed my forehead, a perfunctory gesture that felt more like a pat than any expression of affection, and headed for the garage. I watched through the window as her BMW disappeared down our street, its taillights swallowed by the December darkness. I sat there for a long time, staring at the Christmas tree and thinking about the woman I'd married. Marta Rodriguez, she'd kept her maiden name professionally, had been the most vibrant person I'd ever met. Smart, funny, ambitious, with an infectious laugh that could fill a room. She'd chosen me somehow over all the other men who'd pursued her in college. Nick Carpenter, the sarcastic English major who wrote poetry and dreamed of becoming the next great American novelist. 24 years later, I was still writing copy for restaurant chains, and she was... What? Where was she really going at 8 o'clock on a Tuesday night? I pulled out my phone and opened the Find My app. A year ago, during a family camping trip, we'd all shared our locations so we could find each other if someone got lost. I'd forgotten about it until now. Marta's phone was at the Henderson and Associates building downtown, so maybe she really was dealing with a work emergency. Maybe I was being paranoid, letting Victoria's gossip and my own insecurities create problems that didn't exist. But then I remembered the coffee shop barista's words. It looked more like a date than a business meeting. I called Amelia, who was finishing her junior year at the University of Wisconsin. Of our two kids, she was the one who still talked to me regularly, who seemed to understand that beneath my sarcastic exterior was a man who loved his family more than anything. Dad! Her voice was bright and cheerful. Perfect timing. I just finished my art history final. How did it go? Like watching paint dry, except less exciting. But I think I passed. She paused. Is everything okay? You sound weird. Amelia had always been perceptive, even as a little girl. She could read emotions in people's voices, spot the things others missed. Just tired, I said. Looking forward to Christmas in Wisconsin. It'll be good to have the whole family together. About that. Amelia's tone shifted. I talked to Mom yesterday, and she seemed kind of vague about the plans, like she wasn't sure she was coming. What do you mean? She said something about work obligations, maybe having to cut the trip short. I thought you two had discussed it. We hadn't discussed anything. For weeks I'd been planning this Christmas surprise, imagining the moment when I'd present Marta with the bracelet and ask her to renew our vows in front of her parents and our children. I'd written a speech, made reservations at her favorite restaurant, even contacted a photographer to capture the moment. And apparently, she might not even be there. Dad, you still there? Yeah, sorry, just thinking. Is everything okay with you and Mom? The question I'd been dreading. How do you tell your daughter that your marriage might be falling apart? That the woman who raised her, who taught her to be strong and independent and never settle for less than she deserved, might be having an affair? We're fine, sweetheart. Just busy with work stuff. Okay. She didn't sound convinced. But Dad, if you ever need to talk, you know I'm here, right? I mean, I know I'm just your kid, but I'm not actually a kid anymore. I know, and thank you. After we hung up, I sat in the quiet house and tried to remember the last time Marta and I had really talked. Not about schedules or household logistics, but about dreams and fears and the things that mattered. The last time we'd laughed together, really laughed, until our sides hurt and tears ran down our faces. I couldn't remember. At 11:30, I heard the garage door open. Marta came in looking exhausted, her hair slightly mussed, her lipstick gone. How did it go? I asked. Long night, but we got it sorted out. She headed straight for the stairs. I'm going to shower and go to bed. Don't wait up. Marta? She turned back, her hand on the banister. I love you, I said. For just a moment, something flickered in her expression. Guilt? Sadness? But then it was gone, replaced by that polite distance I'd grown to hate. Love you too, she said, the words automatic and empty. I listened to the shower running upstairs and checked the Find My app again. According to her phone, she'd been at the office until 20 minutes ago. So maybe I really was being paranoid. Maybe the marriage counselor was right about trust and communication, and I was creating problems where none existed. But when I went upstairs to brush my teeth, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. Marta's work bag was sitting on our dresser, and sticking out of the side pocket was a receipt from Romano's, the expensive Italian restaurant downtown. Dinner for two, tonight's date, total $127.50. Marta hated Italian food. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed next to my wife, listening to her breathe, staring at the ceiling and trying to make sense of the receipt. Maybe it was a client dinner. Maybe she'd forced herself to eat Italian food for business reasons. Maybe there was a perfectly innocent explanation that didn't involve Jake Turnbull and his Porsche and his reputation as the agency's most eligible bachelor. But when I finally drifted off around 4 a.m., my dreams were filled with images of Marta laughing at candlelit tables with faceless men who weren't me. I woke up alone. Marta's side of the bed was cold, and I could hear her moving around downstairs. When I made it to the kitchen, she was already dressed for work, standing at the counter with a travel mug of coffee and her phone pressed to her ear. No, that won't work, she was saying. We need at least 3 days to really dive deep into the strategy. She glanced at me and mouthed, "Work call," then turned away. Right, exactly. It has to be somewhere we won't be interrupted. She ended the call and grabbed her keys. "Running late," she said, not quite meeting my eyes. "See you tonight." "Marta, wait." She paused at the door, impatience radiating from every line of her body. "Can we talk tonight? Really talk? I feel like we've been ships passing in the night lately." "Sure," she said, but her tone suggested it was just another item to add to her to-do list. "We'll talk." After she left, I sat at our kitchen table and tried to eat breakfast, but everything tasted like cardboard. The house felt too quiet, too empty. Even our golden retriever, Murphy, seemed to sense the tension. He kept looking toward the door where Marta had disappeared, then back at me with those soulful brown eyes that seemed to ask, "What's wrong with our pack?" I arrived at work early, hoping to catch Dave before the daily chaos began. I found him in his office, wearing a Ramones t-shirt and drinking coffee from a mug that said, "World's Okayest Boss." "Dave, quick question about the Aspen retreat Victoria mentioned." He looked up from his computer, confusion creasing his forehead. "Aspen retreat?" "The strategy planning session, for the Turnbull account?" "Nick, I have no idea what you're talking about. We don't have any retreats planned, and certainly not in Aspen. Our budget wouldn't cover a weekend at a Holiday Inn, let alone a ski resort." The coffee in my stomach turned to acid. "You're sure?" "Positive. Where did you hear about this?" "Must have been a miscommunication," I managed. "Sorry to bother you." I made it back to my cubicle before the full impact hit me. There was no work retreat, no strategy session, no business reason for Marta to disappear to Aspen with Jake Turnbull, which meant, "Nick!" Victoria appeared at my desk, her face flushed with excitement. "Did you hear about the Morrison campaign presentation? Marta and Jake absolutely killed it yesterday. The client loved everything." "Yesterday?" "The big presentation. You know, the one Marta had to rush back for last night." Victoria's eyes were bright with the thrill of sharing information. "Jake said they worked until almost midnight perfecting the pitch. Very dedicated, those two." Midnight. The receipt from Romano's was time-stamped at 8:47 p.m., which meant Marta and Jake had gone from dinner to where? Not the office, according to Victoria. Not home, according to Marta. "They make a great team," Victoria continued, oblivious to my growing horror. "Very collaborative. Jake's been raving about Marta's creative insights. Says she really understands his vision. I bet she does." "Victoria," I said carefully, "have you noticed anything different about Marta lately?" Her expression shifted, becoming more guarded. "Different how?" "I don't know. Distracted. Secretive." Victoria glanced around the office, then leaned closer. "Nick, can I give you some advice? As a friend?" I nodded, even though I was pretty sure I didn't want to hear what she was about to say. Sometimes when people are going through transitions, they need space to figure things out. The best thing you can do is give Marta room to breathe. Don't crowd her. Don't ask too many questions. Just be patient and supportive. Transitions. What kind of transition required expensive dinners and midnight strategy sessions with Jake Turnbull? The rest of the day passed in a blur of meetings and deadlines, but I couldn't focus on anything. Every conversation felt like it was happening underwater. Every task seemed pointless. I kept thinking about the Tiffany bracelet in my desk drawer, about the Christmas surprise I'd planned, about the speech I'd written asking Marta to renew our vows. What kind of fool asks a woman to recommit to a marriage she's already abandoned? At 5 o'clock, I made a decision that would have seemed impossible a week earlier. Instead of going home, I drove to Jake Turnbull's neighborhood. I knew where he lived because the agency directory included home addresses, and because Jake had hosted a few company parties at his place over the years. A modern house in an expensive suburb, all glass and steel and architectural pretension. The kind of place that screamed, successful bachelor with excellent taste and disposable income. I parked across the street and waited, feeling like a stalker, but unable to stop myself. At 6:23 p.m., Marta's BMW pulled into Jake's driveway. She sat in the car for a moment, checking her appearance in the rearview mirror. Then she got out, walked to Jake's front door, and let herself in with a key. A key. I sat there for 2 hours, watching the lights in Jake's windows, imagining my wife of 24 years in another man's house, in another man's arms, planning a future that didn't include me. When I finally drove home, I felt like a stranger in my own life. Everything looked the same. Our house, our street, our neighbors walking their dogs in the December cold. But it all felt like a movie set, an elaborate fake designed to hide the truth. Marta's car wasn't in our garage. I went inside and poured myself a scotch, then another. Murphy came and sat beside my chair, resting his head on my knee in the way dogs do when they sense their humans are in pain. "What am I supposed to do, boy?" I asked him. "How do you fight for a marriage when the other person has already left?" Murphy just looked at me with those wise, sad eyes. At 10:47 p.m., I heard the garage door. Marta came in carrying takeout bags from our favorite Thai restaurant, the same restaurant where we'd had our first official date 26 years ago. "Thought you might be hungry," she said, her voice artificially bright. "I got your usual." Pad Thai with chicken, medium spice. She remembered my order from a restaurant we'd been going to for decades, but she couldn't remember that she was supposed to love me. "Where were you?" I asked. "Working late. I told you this morning things were crazy." "At the office?" A pause. "Where else would I be?" I could have told her. I could have described Jake's house, the key she'd used, the 2 hours I'd spent watching her live a life that didn't include me. Instead, I just nodded and opened the takeout containers. We ate in silence, like strangers sharing a table at a bus station. The pad thai tasted like nothing. The woman across from me looked like my wife, sounded like my wife, but she was someone else entirely. Someone who could lie to my face while serving me dinner from our special place. "Nick," she said finally, "about Christmas. Here it comes. I might need to cut the Wisconsin trip short. There's a big project coming up and I need to be available." "What kind of project?" "Strategy planning for next year." She wouldn't meet my eyes. "It's a great opportunity for the agency." "In Aspen?" Her fork stopped halfway to her mouth. "What?" "The strategy planning. Is it in Aspen?" Where did you hear that?" "Does it matter?" We stared at each other across our kitchen table, 24 years of marriage reduced to this moment of mutual recognition. She knew that I knew. I knew that she knew that I knew. "Nick, don't." I stood up, suddenly unable to bear another lie. "Just don't." I went upstairs and locked myself in our bathroom, sitting on the edge of the tub and trying to breathe. In the mirror across from me, I could see a middle-aged man with graying hair and tired eyes, a man whose wife was planning a romantic getaway with another man while pretending to care about his feelings. The Tiffany bracelet was still in my desk drawer downstairs. The Christmas surprise was still planned. The speech asking her to renew our vows was still saved on my computer. But the marriage was over. I just didn't know it yet. The next morning, Marta was gone before I woke up. She'd left a note on the kitchen counter. "Early meeting. See you tonight. M." Not love, Marta, or XOXO, or any of the little endearments that had punctuated our communications for decades. Just M, like I was a business associate who merited basic politeness, but nothing more. I called in sick to work. For the first time in 5 years, I just couldn't face the office, couldn't pretend to care about restaurant campaigns and client presentations while my marriage disintegrated around me. Instead, I sat in my home office and did something I'd never done before. I Googled my wife. Marta Rodriguez Henderson Associates brought up the usual results: her professional bio, industry articles, photos from agency events. But when I added Jake Turnbull to the search, something interesting appeared. A photo from last month's Advertising Excellence Awards ceremony. Marta and Jake at a cocktail table, standing closer than necessary, her hand on his arm, both of them laughing at some private joke. The caption read, "Henderson Associates Dynamic Duo celebrates their Morrison campaign win." Dynamic duo. I scrolled through more photos from the event. There they were again, sharing a dance during the after-party. Jake's hand on the small of her back, Marta's head tilted toward his shoulder. They looked like a couple. They looked happy. I looked like an idiot who'd been sitting at home that night watching Netflix and waiting for his wife to come home from what she'd described as a boring industry thing. My phone rang. Ross. "Dad, weird question. I tried to call Mom about Christmas plans, but her voicemail is full and she's not returning texts. Is everything okay? How do you tell your son that his mother is having an affair? That the family Christmas he's looking forward to might not happen because his parents' marriage is imploding?" "She's been swamped at work," I said. "You know how it gets this time of year." "Yeah, but this is different. Usually she gets back to me within a few hours, even when she's busy. It's been 3 days. 3 days. While I'd been obsessing over restaurant receipts and mysterious phone calls, Marta had been ignoring our son. The same woman who'd never missed a soccer game or school play, who'd driven 6 hours to bring Ross soup when he had the flu his freshman year of college. "I'll talk to her," I promised. "Dad?" Ross's voice carried a note I recognized from his childhood when he'd sensed adult problems he couldn't quite understand. "Are you and Mom okay?" "We're fine," I lied. "Just busy." After we hung up, I sat in my office surrounded by the detritus of our life together. Family photos on the walls, vacation souvenirs on the shelves, a coffee mug Amelia had made me in high school that said "World's Best Dad" in crooked purple letters. When had it all started falling apart? When had the woman who'd once loved me enough to promise forever decided that forever was too long? I opened my laptop and pulled up the speech I'd written for Christmas morning. 3 pages of heartfelt words about second chances and renewed commitment, about how much our family meant to me and how grateful I was for every day we'd had together. I deleted it. Then I opened a new document and began typing something else entirely. At 6 p.m., I heard Marta's car in the driveway. I closed the laptop and went downstairs, where I found her in the kitchen, opening a bottle of wine with the mechanical efficiency of someone who'd been drinking alone more often lately. "How was your day?" she asked without looking at me. "Interesting. Yours?" "Long." She poured herself a generous glass of Pinot Grigio. "But productive. Ross called. He's been trying to reach you for 3 days." Her hand stilled on the wine bottle. "I've been meaning to call him back. He's your son, Marta, not a client you can put on hold." "Don't lecture me about parenting, Nick. I've been just as involved in raising our children as you have." "When? Between your late meetings and weekend strategy sessions?" She turned to face me, her eyes flashing with anger. "What is that supposed to mean?" "It means I know about Jake." The words hung in the air between us like a physical presence. Marta's face went through a series of expressions: surprise, guilt, defiance, and finally a kind of cold calculation. "Know what about Jake?" "I know about the dinners, the late nights, the key to his house." "You followed me?" Her voice was incredulous, as if my behavior was the real betrayal here. "I drove by, once, and I saw you let yourself in like you'd done it 100 times before." Marta set down her wine glass and crossed her arms. "So what? Jake and I work closely together. Sometimes that means meeting at his house instead of the office." "With a key?" "It's more convenient than waiting for him to answer the door." "Jesus, Marta. Do you hear yourself? You're talking about your lover like he's a business partner." "He's not my lover." But her voice lacked conviction, and she couldn't meet my eyes. "Then what is he?" Silence stretched between us. Outside, I could hear our neighbors' children playing in their yard, their laughter a sharp contrast to the death of joy in our kitchen. "I don't know," she said finally. "You don't know?" "I don't know what he is. I don't know what I want. I don't know anything anymore, Nick. Okay? Is that what you want to hear? The honesty was more devastating than any lie could have been. At least lies suggested she cared enough to protect my feelings. This raw admission of confusion meant she'd stopped considering my feelings altogether. How long? I asked. How long what? How long have you been sleeping with him? I'm not. She stopped, shook her head. It's not like that. What is it like? It's complicated. Complicated. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. 24 years of marriage, 2 kids, a mortgage, and a life together, and your affair is complicated? Don't call it that. What should I call it? A strategic partnership? Marta picked up her wine glass and drained half of it in one swallow. You wouldn't understand. Try me. Jake makes me feel... She paused, searching for words. Alive, interesting, like I'm more than just someone's wife and someone's mother and someone's employee. You are more than that. You've always been more than that. To who? To you? She laughed bitterly. When was the last time you looked at me, really looked at me, and saw anything other than the woman who manages your household and shares your bed? I look at you every day. No, you look through me. You see what you need me to be, not who I actually am. And Jake sees who you actually are? Yes. The word was barely a whisper, but it hit me like a physical blow. So what happens now? I asked. Do you want a divorce? I don't know. Do you want to work on our marriage? I don't know. Do you love him? A longer pause. I don't know. Do you still love me? The longest pause of all. I don't know. I nodded, feeling strangely calm. Well, when you figure it out, let me know. I'll be upstairs. I left her standing in the kitchen with her wine and her uncertainty, and went to our bedroom to pack a bag. I couldn't stay in this house tonight. Couldn't lie next to a woman who didn't know if she loved me. Couldn't pretend that everything was normal when our entire life had just revealed itself to be a lie. Where are you going? Marta appeared in the doorway as I folded shirts into a duffel bag. Hotel. Maybe Ross's apartment. I haven't decided. Nick, don't be dramatic. Dramatic? I turned to face her. My wife is having an affair and doesn't know if she wants to be married anymore, and I'm being dramatic by giving her space to figure it out. I never said I was having an affair. You never said you weren't. She leaned against the doorframe, watching me pack. What about Christmas? What about Wisconsin? I stopped folding clothes and looked at her. Are you planning to be there? Yes. Probably. Probably? There might be work conflicts. With Jake? She didn't answer, which was answer enough. I zipped up the duffel bag and slung it over my shoulder. When you decide what you want, Marta, really decide, not just I don't know, call me. Until then, I'll be at the Hampton Inn on 7th Street. Nick, wait. I stopped at the bedroom door. I never meant for this to happen. But it did happen, and now we have to figure out what comes next. I left her standing there and drove through the December night to a hotel room that smelled like industrial disinfectant and other people's disappointments. I sat on the edge of the bed and called our children. Ross first. Dad? What's wrong? You sound weird. Your mom and I are having some problems. I'm staying at a hotel for a few days while we work things out. Silence. Then, are you getting divorced? I don't know. I hope not. Is there someone else? My son was 22 years old enough for honesty. I think so. Shit. Another pause. Sorry, I know you don't like it when I swear. Under the circumstances, I think it's appropriate. What can I do? Nothing. This is between your mother and me. But Ross, no matter what happens, this isn't your fault or Amelia's. Sometimes marriages just break. It doesn't mean we love you any less. I know, Dad, but it still sucks. Yeah, it really does. Amelia took the news harder. She cried, asked a dozen questions I couldn't answer, and finally said the thing I'd been dreading most. I knew something was wrong. I could hear it in both your voices. I just hoped I was imagining it. I'm sorry, sweetheart. Don't apologize to me. This isn't your fault. It takes two people to break a marriage. Maybe. But it only takes one person to fix it. Is Mom even trying? I thought about Marta standing in our kitchen, saying, "I don't know," to every question that mattered. I don't think she knows how, I said. After the calls, I lay on the hotel bed and stared at the ceiling. Tomorrow I would have to decide what to do about Christmas, about the reservations I'd made, about the family gathering that might not happen. Tomorrow I would have to figure out how to tell Marta's parents that their daughter was destroying our marriage for a man who drove a Porsche and made her feel alive. But tonight, I just mourned. For the woman I'd married, who'd disappeared somewhere along the way. For the family I'd thought we were building together. For the future I'd imagined that would never exist. And for the first time in 24 years, I fell asleep alone. I woke up in the hotel room feeling like I'd been hit by a truck. The digital clock on the nightstand glowed 6:23 a.m., and for a moment I couldn't remember where I was. Then it all came flooding back. Marta's confession, the fight, the terrible certainty that my marriage was over. My phone showed 3 missed calls from Victoria and a text from Marta. "We need to talk." I ordered room service coffee and called Victoria back, curious what fresh gossip she had to share. "Nick, thank God. I heard about last night." "You heard what about last night?" "Marta called me. She's devastated. She said you two had a huge fight and you stormed out." Stormed out. Interesting interpretation of events. "Did she mention why we fought?" A pause. "She said you've been suspicious and jealous lately, that you accused her of having an affair with Jake." "I didn't accuse her. I asked her directly, and she couldn't deny it." "Nick?" Victoria's voice took on that careful tone people use when they think you're having a breakdown. "I know you're going through a rough patch, but don't you think you might be overreacting? Marta and Jake work together. Of course they spend time together." "At his house? With her own key?" Silence. "Victoria, did you know?" "Know what?" "About the affair. About whatever's been going on between them." "There's no affair, Nick. You're being paranoid." But something in her voice suggested otherwise. Victoria was many things, gossipy, manipulative, self-centered, but she was a terrible liar. "How long have you known?" "Known what? There's nothing to know." "Victoria." A long sigh. "Nick, listen to me carefully. Whatever you think is happening, you need to be very careful how you handle it. Marta is my best friend, and she's also a respected creative director at our agency. If you start spreading rumors or making accusations..." "I'm not spreading rumors. I'm trying to save my marriage." "Then maybe you should focus on being a better husband instead of playing detective." The line went dead. I sat there staring at my phone, trying to process what had just happened. Victoria, who'd been my friend too, who'd been a bridesmaid at our wedding, who'd held Ross when he was a baby, had just chosen sides. And she hadn't chosen mine. My phone buzzed with a text from Jake Turnbull. "We should talk. Coffee at 2 p.m., Starbucks on 5th Street. The audacity was breathtaking. The man who was sleeping with my wife wanted to have coffee and chat about it like civilized adults. I typed back, "See you there." I spent the morning driving aimlessly around Minneapolis, trying to make sense of how my life had imploded so completely in the span of a week. Last Monday, I'd been planning a romantic Christmas surprise. Today, I was preparing to confront my wife's lover in a coffee shop. At 1:45 p.m., I parked across from the Starbucks and watched Jake arrive in his silver Porsche. He looked exactly like what he was, a successful, confident man in his early 40s who was used to getting what he wanted. Expensive suit, perfect hair, the kind of easy swagger that came from never having been truly rejected or disappointed. I waited 5 minutes, then went inside. Jake had claimed a corner table, 2 coffee cups already waiting. He stood when he saw me, extending his hand like we were meeting for a business lunch. "Nick, thanks for coming." I ignored the handshake and sat down. "What do you want, Jake?" "To clear the air. To make sure we understand each other." "I understand perfectly. You're sleeping with my wife." Several nearby customers turned to stare. Jake's composure slipped for just a moment. "Keep your voice down." "Or what? You'll tell my wife I was rude to you?" Jake leaned forward, his voice low and intense. "Look, I know this is difficult." "Difficult?" I laughed. "My marriage is falling apart because of you and you think it's difficult?" "Your marriage was falling apart long before I came along." The words hit like a physical blow, not because they were cruel, but because they might be true. "Marta deserves better than what she's been getting," Jake continued. "She's an incredible woman, brilliant, creative, passionate, and she's been wasted on someone who takes her for granted. You don't know anything about my marriage. I know she's been unhappy for years. I know she feels invisible in her own home. I know she's been dying inside while you've been content to coast along, assuming she'd always be there no matter how little effort you put in. And you're going to save her? I'm going to appreciate her. I'm going to see her for who she really is, not just who you need her to be." I studied Jake's face, looking for signs of guilt or shame or any recognition that he'd destroyed a family. Instead, I saw righteousness. He actually believed he was the hero in this story. "Do you love her?" I asked. "Yes." "Does she love you?" A pause. "She's getting there." "Getting there." I shook my head. "You know what the difference is between you and me, Jake?" "What's that?" "I fell in love with Marta 26 years ago and I never stopped. You fell in love with the idea of taking something that belonged to someone else." "She doesn't belong to you." "No, she doesn't. But she chose me. She married me, had children with me, built a life with me, and you decided that didn't matter." Jake leaned back in his chair, his confidence returning. "If your marriage was solid, I wouldn't have been a threat. Every marriage has rough patches. That doesn't give you the right to swoop in and take advantage." "I didn't take advantage of anyone. Marta is a grown woman who made her own choices. Choices you encouraged. Choices you facilitated. Choices she was going to make eventually anyway. I just happened to be there when she was ready." The casual arrogance was stunning. Jake had convinced himself that he'd done nothing wrong, that he was simply the beneficiary of a marriage that was destined to fail. "So what happens now?" I asked. "Now you let her go. You stop making this harder than it has to be, and you let her be happy." "With you?" "With me." "And our kids, our life together, 24 years of marriage?" Jake shrugged. "Sometimes people grow apart. It's nobody's fault." "It's your fault." "Nick, I understand you're angry." "Do you?" I stood up, my voice rising again. "Do you understand that you've destroyed a family? That my children are going to spend Christmas wondering why their parents can't be in the same room together? That my son asked me yesterday if his mother loves someone else, and I had to tell him the truth? That's not my responsibility." "The hell it isn't." Other customers were definitely staring now, but I didn't care. I was done pretending this was a civilized conversation between reasonable adults. "You want to know what I think, Jake? I think you're a coward who preys on unhappy wives because you're too pathetic to build something real with someone who's actually available." Jake's face flushed. "You're out of line." "Am I? How many other married women have you appreciated over the years? How many other families have you helped destroy? I'm not going to sit here and be insulted." "Then leave. Go back to your glass house and your Porsche and your stolen wife and enjoy it while it lasts." "What's that supposed to mean?" I leaned down, my face inches from his. "It means that if Marta could betray me after 24 years, she can betray you after 24 minutes. Think about that the next time she's working late." I left him sitting there and walked out into the December cold, my hands shaking with rage and adrenaline. The confrontation had accomplished nothing except to confirm what I already knew. Jake felt no guilt, no remorse, no responsibility for the damage he'd caused. In his mind, he was the hero rescuing a damsel in distress from her boring husband. My phone rang as I got to my car. Marta. What did you say to Jake? Hello to you too. He called me upset. He said you made a scene in public. I told him what I thought of him. Nick, I can't what? I can't be angry that my wife's boyfriend wanted to have coffee and explain why he deserves my family more than I do. He's not my boyfriend. What is he then? Silence. Marta, I'm tired of playing games. Either you want to save our marriage or you don't. Either you're willing to end whatever this is with Jake or you're not. But I'm done with the I don't know routine. It's not that simple. It is that simple. You choose him or you choose me. You choose our family or you choose your affair. But you don't get to have both while you figure out what makes you happier. I need time. How much time? I don't know. There's that phrase again. I got into my car and started the engine. Here's what I know, Marta. I love you. I love our family. I'm willing to fight for our marriage, go to counseling, do whatever it takes to fix what's broken between us. But I won't compete with Jake Turnbull for my own wife's attention. What does that mean? It means you have until Christmas to decide what you want. If you choose him, I'll file for divorce after the holidays. If you choose us, then Jake disappears from your life completely and we start over. You can't give me an ultimatum. I just did. I hung up and drove back to the hotel, feeling simultaneously empowered and terrified. I'd drawn a line in the sand, but I had no idea which side of it Marta would choose to stand on. What I did know was that I was done being the understanding husband who waited patiently while his wife decided whether their marriage was worth saving. I'd spent weeks making excuses for her behavior, rationalizing her lies, accepting her indifference. No more. If Marta wanted Jake Turnbull, she could have him, but she couldn't have him and me both. The question was, which one of us did she actually want? Christmas Eve arrived gray and cold, with the promise of snow in the heavy clouds that hung over Minneapolis like a wool blanket. I sat in my hotel room, staring at the Tiffany bracelet that was supposed to have been Marta's surprise, and tried to decide what to do. She'd called twice since our ultimatum conversation 3 days ago. Both calls had been brief, awkward exchanges about logistics, who would drive to Wisconsin, what to tell her parents, whether we should cancel the whole thing. Both calls had ended with her saying she needed just a little more time to figure things out. Time. As if 24 years of marriage could be weighed against a few months of whatever she had with Jake Turnbull, and the decision required careful consideration. My phone buzzed. Ross, calling from the road. Dad, I'm about 2 hours out from Grandma and Grandpa's. Are you and Mom driving up together? I closed my eyes. We'd managed to avoid telling the kids about the ultimatum, about the hotel room, about the fact that their parents couldn't be in the same house without everything falling apart. We're taking separate cars, I said. Different schedules. Okay. A pause. Dad, are you sure you're okay? You've sounded weird all week. I'm fine, son. Looking forward to seeing you. Me too. It'll be good to have the family together for Christmas. The family. What was left of it. After we hung up, I made a decision. I packed my bag, checked out of the hotel, and drove to the house I'd shared with Marta for 15 years. Her car wasn't in the driveway. No surprise there. She'd been staying late at work every night since our fight, which probably meant she'd been at Jake's house, playing domestic with a man who thought stealing wives was a hobby. I let myself in and stood in our living room, looking at the Christmas tree I'd decorated 3 weeks ago, when I still believed in happy endings. The presents underneath were wrapped in the careful coordination Marta had always insisted on. Red and gold paper, matching ribbons, everything perfect for the family photos she loved to take. There was one present I'd wrapped separately, hidden in my office closet. I retrieved it now and placed it under the tree with a tag that read, "For Marta, your last gift from me, Nick." Inside the box was the Tiffany bracelet, along with a letter I'd written that morning. "Marta, I bought this for you 3 weeks ago, when I still believed our marriage could be saved with romantic gestures and renewed vows. I was planning to give it to you on Christmas morning and ask you to marry me again, to start over, to remember why we fell in love in the first place. I know now that jewelry can't fix what's broken between us. Neither can ultimatums or counseling or desperate attempts to win you back from a man who sees you as a prize to be won rather than a person to be loved. You asked for time, but time won't change the fundamental choice you have to make. You can't love 2 men at once, Marta. You can't be married to me while building a life with Jake. You can't keep our family in limbo while you decide which future makes you happier. So I'm making the choice for you. I'm filing for divorce when we get back from Wisconsin. Not because I don't love you. I do, more than I've ever loved anything in my life. But because I love you enough to let you go if that's what you really want." Jake was right about one thing. You deserve to be happy. If he makes you happier than I do, then you should be with him. But our children deserve better than parents who stay together out of obligation or guilt or fear of change. The bracelet is yours, regardless. 24 years of marriage should end with something beautiful, even if the marriage itself wasn't beautiful at the end. I hope someday you'll remember the good times we had together. I hope you'll remember that I loved you completely, even when you couldn't love me back. Merry Christmas, Nick. I sealed the letter in an envelope and attached it to the jewelry box, then took one last look around the house that had been our home. Everything looked the same, but it felt like a museum exhibit now, a display of a life that had ended, preserved for visitors who wanted to see how people used to live. I drove to Wisconsin through the gathering dusk, listening to Christmas music on the radio, and trying not to think about all the other Christmas Eves when Marta and I had made this drive together, laughing and planning and looking forward to time with family. Marta's parents lived on a sprawling estate outside Madison, a restored farmhouse surrounded by snow-covered fields and bare oak trees. I'd always loved this place. The peace of it, the sense of permanence, the way it made our own problems seem small and temporary. Cars were already parked in the circular driveway when I arrived. Ross's Honda, Amelia's little Toyota, Marta's BMW. She'd beaten me here, which meant she'd probably already started spinning the story of our separation in whatever way made her look best. I sat in my car for a moment, gathering courage. Then I grabbed my overnight bag and walked to the front door. Marta's mother, Elena, answered my knock with a warm hug that felt like absolution. "Nick, we were wondering when you'd get here. Marta said you were driving separately." "Work stuff," I said, the lie coming easily now. "Had to tie up some loose ends." "Well, you're here now. That's what matters." The house smelled like cinnamon and pine, and all the Christmas scents that meant family and tradition and home. Ross and Amelia descended on me immediately, both talking at once about finals and graduation plans and their excitement about being together for the holidays. "Where's Mom?" I asked. "Upstairs," Amelia said. "She seemed tired when she got here, said she needed to rest before dinner." Or she was hiding from me, or she was on the phone with Jake, getting advice on how to handle the awkward family gathering with the husband she was planning to leave. Marta's father, Carlos, appeared with a beer and his usual warm smile. Carlos had always liked me, despite the fact that I'd stolen his daughter's heart when she was barely 20 years old. Over the years, we'd developed the easy friendship that comes from shared interests, baseball, bad jokes, and genuine affection for the woman we both loved. "Nick, good to see you, son. How's the advertising business?" "Same as always. Trying to convince people they need things they don't want." "Honest work," Carlos chuckled. Someone's got to keep the economy moving. We made small talk about the weather and the drive and the Vikings' disappointing season, but I could see the questions in his eyes. Carlos wasn't stupid. He'd probably noticed the tension between Marta and me, the way we'd barely looked at each other during dinner preparations. At 7 o'clock, we gathered around Elena's massive dining room table for the traditional Christmas Eve feast. Ham and turkey and enough side dishes to feed a small army, all prepared with the meticulous care that Marta had inherited from her mother. Marta sat across from me, beautiful in a green dress that brought out her eyes, making polite conversation with her parents and our children while studiously avoiding my gaze. She looked tired, I noticed. There were dark circles under her eyes that makeup couldn't quite hide, and her smile seemed forced. Good. Maybe the weight of her choices was finally getting to her. "So," Elena said as we finished the main course, "what's everyone's Christmas wish this year?" It was a family tradition. Everyone had to share one thing they hoped for in the coming year. Usually it was light-hearted stuff about travel or career goals or finding the perfect boyfriend. Ross went first. "I wish for a job that doesn't require me to live in my parents' basement after graduation." Everyone laughed, the tension easing slightly. Amelia was next. "I wish for the courage to pursue my art, even if it means being a starving artist for a while." "You'll never starve," Carlos promised. "Grandma will always feed you." Elena wished for good health for everyone she loved. Carlos wished for the twins to finally win another World Series. The attention turned to me. "I wish," I said, looking directly at Marta for the first time all evening, "for the wisdom to know when to fight for something and when to let it go." Marta's face went pale. She understood exactly what I meant. "And you, mija?" Elena asked her daughter. "What's your Christmas wish?" Marta stared down at her plate, her hands trembling slightly. I wish I could go back and make different choices. I wish I could undo the hurt I've caused." The silence that followed was deafening. Ross and Amelia exchanged worried glances. Elena reached over and squeezed her daughter's hand. "We all make mistakes, mija. The important thing is learning from them." "Some mistakes can't be fixed," Marta whispered. "Most can," Carlos said gently, "if both people want to fix them." Both people. I met Marta's eyes across the table, and for a moment I saw the woman I'd fallen in love with. Vulnerable, uncertain, afraid of making the wrong choice. But then she looked away, and the moment was gone. We made it through dessert and gift exchanges with forced cheerfulness, everyone pretending not to notice the elephant in the room. Ross and Amelia opened their presents with enthusiasm that felt slightly desperate, as if they could hold the family together through sheer force of Christmas spirit. At 11 o'clock, I excused myself and went to the guest room I'd been assigned. Not the room Marta and I usually shared, I noticed. Elena had tactfully given us separate spaces without asking questions. I was brushing my teeth when someone knocked on the door. "Come in." Marta stepped inside, still wearing the green dress, but with her makeup gone and her hair loose around her shoulders. She looked young and scared and heartbreakingly beautiful. "We need to talk," she said. "Do we?" "Nick, please. I know you're angry." "I'm not angry anymore. I'm tired. I got your letter." I'd wondered if she'd found the present I'd left under our tree at home. "And? The bracelet is beautiful, but I can't accept it." "Why not?" "Because it feels like a goodbye gift." "It is a goodbye gift." She sat down heavily on the edge of the bed, her shoulders sagging. "So that's it? You've given up on us?" "Have you?" "I don't know." There's that phrase again. I sat down beside her, careful to leave space between us. "Marta, for 3 weeks I've been asking you the same questions, and you keep giving me the same non-answers. Do you love Jake? I don't know. Do you want a divorce? I don't know. Do you want to save our marriage? I don't know. It's complicated." "It's not complicated. It's scary, but it's not complicated. Either you want to be married to me, or you don't. I want to be married to you. The honesty was devastating. But you don't. I don't know how anymore. I don't know how to be the wife you need me to be. I don't need you to be anything other than who you are. But who am I, Nick? I've been your wife and the kid's mother and Elena's daughter for so long that I don't remember who I was before all of that. You were the woman I fell in love with. That woman was 22 years old. She didn't know anything about mortgages or college tuition or what it feels like to wake up next to the same person for 24 years and wonder if this is all there is. Is that what you wonder? She nodded, tears starting to fall. And I hate myself for it. I hate that I'm not grateful for this beautiful life we built together. I hate that I look at Jake and see possibility instead of responsibility. So choose possibility. Choose him. It's not that simple. Why not? Because I love you too. I love our family. I love the life we built together, even if it doesn't feel like enough anymore. But it doesn't feel like enough. No, she whispered. It doesn't. I nodded, feeling strangely relieved. Finally, the truth. Then we both know what you have to do. Nick, Marta, listen to me. I love you enough to want you to be happy, even if that happiness doesn't include me. But I won't spend the rest of my life wondering if I'm enough, wondering if you're going to find another Jake Turnbull when this one stops making you feel alive. I would never. You said you would never cheat on me either. But here we are. She flinched as if I'd slapped her. That's not fair. None of this is fair. It's not fair that you fell out of love with me. It's not fair that Jake decided our marriage was his for the taking. It's not fair that Ross and Amelia are going to spend the rest of their lives dealing with the fallout from our choices. So what do? We end this, cleanly, honestly, with as much dignity as we can manage. We tell the kids together. We figure out custody and finances like adults. We try to salvage some kind of friendship from the wreckage of our marriage. And Jake? That's your choice, but if you choose him completely. No more lying, no more sneaking around, no more pretending this is something it's not. Marta was crying openly now, her shoulders shaking with the force of her sobs. I never wanted to hurt you. I know. I never wanted any of this to happen. I know. I'm so sorry, Nick. I'm so sorry. I pulled her into my arms, and for a moment we were just two people who'd loved each other once, mourning the death of something that had been beautiful before it became broken. I'm sorry, too, I whispered into her hair. I'm sorry I wasn't enough. You were enough. You are enough. I'm just broken somehow. I don't know how to be satisfied with good when I keep dreaming about perfect. Perfect doesn't exist, Marta. I know, but I can't stop looking for it. We held each other until the tears stopped, until the weight of 24 years settled between us like a blanket. Then Marta pulled away and wiped her eyes. What do we tell the kids tomorrow? The truth, that we love them, that this isn't their fault, and that we're going to figure out how to be a family even if we're not married anymore. They're going to hate me. No, they're not. They're going to be hurt and confused and angry, but they're not going to hate you. You're their mother. I feel like such a failure. You're not a failure. You're human. Humans make mistakes, even big ones. She stood up, smoothing down her dress. I should go. Let you get some sleep. Marta? She turned back at the door. For what it's worth, I hope Jake makes you happy. I hope he gives you whatever it was you couldn't find with me. Nick, I mean it. You deserve to be happy, even if I'm not the one who can make you happy anymore. She nodded, unable to speak, and slipped out of the room. I lay awake for hours after she left, staring at the ceiling and listening to the old house settle around me. Tomorrow was Christmas Day. Tomorrow we would tell our children that their parents were getting divorced. Tomorrow we would start the long, painful process of untangling 24 years of shared life. But tonight, for just a few hours more, I could pretend that the woman sleeping down the hall was still mine, that our family was still intact, that love was still enough to overcome the distance between two people who'd forgotten how to find their way back to each other. Tomorrow would bring endings and new beginnings and all the messy complications of real life. Tonight, I just mourned. Christmas morning dawned bright and cold, with fresh snow covering the Wisconsin countryside like a benediction. I woke early and stood at my window, watching the sun paint the fields in shades of gold and pink, trying to memorize this moment before everything changed forever. Downstairs, I could hear Elena moving around the kitchen, probably starting the coffee and preparing for the elaborate Christmas breakfast that was another family tradition. The normalcy of it, the familiar sounds of morning routine, the smell of bacon beginning to cook, felt surreal given what Marta and I were planning to tell everyone in a few hours. I showered and dressed carefully, choosing clothes that would photograph well for what might be our last family Christmas pictures. Dark jeans, a blue sweater Marta had given me last year, the watch Ross and Amelia had pooled their money to buy me for my 40th birthday. Armor for the hardest conversation of my life. When I made it downstairs, the kitchen was full of the controlled chaos that always surrounded Elena's holiday cooking. Marta was already there, looking pale but composed, helping her mother with the endless prep work required for feeding 8 people an elaborate meal. "Merry Christmas, Nick," Elena said, kissing my cheek and pressing a cup of coffee into my hands. "Did you sleep well?" "Like a baby," I lied. Ross and Amelia appeared shortly after, both still in pajamas, their hair messy from sleep, but their faces bright with Christmas morning excitement. For a moment, watching them joke with their grandmother and steal pieces of bacon from the pan, I could almost pretend we were still a normal family having a normal Christmas. "Present time," Amelia announced after breakfast, bouncing on her toes like she was still 7 years old instead of 20. We gathered in the living room around Elena's massive tree, a towering Douglas fir decorated with ornaments collected over 40 years of marriage. The pile of presents underneath seemed smaller than usual, a reflection of tight budgets and the general sense that everyone was going through the motions this year. Carlos played Santa, distributing gifts with the same ceremony he'd maintained since Marta was a child. Sweaters and books and gift cards, small tokens of affection wrapped in bright paper and tied with careful bows. Everyone exclaimed over everything, the enthusiasm slightly forced but genuine in its effort. I watched Marta open the bracelet I'd left under our tree at home, saw her face crumple slightly as she read the card that simply said, "For all the good times, N." She fastened it around her wrist with shaking hands, and I noticed she didn't take it off for the rest of the day. "It's beautiful," she said quietly, meeting my eyes across the room. "Thank you." "You're welcome." The gift exchange continued, but I could feel the weight of unspoken words pressing down on all of us. Ross and Amelia kept shooting worried glances at their parents. Elena and Carlos exchanged the kind of meaningful looks that came from 40 years of marriage and the ability to communicate without words. Finally, when the last present had been opened and the wrapping paper cleared away, Marta and I looked at each other and nodded. "Kids," I said, my voice sounding strange in the suddenly quiet room. "Your mom and I need to talk to you about something." The change in atmosphere was immediate. Ross straightened in his chair, his expression becoming guarded. Amelia's smile faded, replaced by the look of someone bracing for bad news. "What's wrong?" Ross asked. Marta and I had discussed how to do this, but now that the moment was here, all our careful planning seemed inadequate. "How do you tell your children that their family is breaking apart? How do you explain that sometimes love isn't enough?" "Your father and I," Marta began, then stopped, her voice catching. She cleared her throat and tried again. "We've been having some problems in our marriage. We know, Amelia said quietly. We've known for weeks. You have. Come on, Mom. You guys have barely spoken to each other since Thanksgiving. Dad's been staying in a hotel. You think we didn't notice? I felt a stab of guilt. We'd thought we were protecting them by keeping up appearances, but of course they'd seen through it. Ross and Amelia were adults now, not children who could be shielded from their parents' problems. We're getting divorced, I said, deciding that direct honesty was better than dancing around the truth. We've tried to work things out, but we can't. We're going to separate after the holidays. The silence that followed was deafening. Elena made a small sound of distress. Carlos reached over and took her hand. Why? Amelia asked, tears starting to form in her eyes. Marta and I looked at each other. We'd agreed not to mention Jake, not to burden the kids with the details of infidelity and betrayal. But how do you explain the end of a marriage without explaining what ended it? Sometimes people grow apart, Marta said finally. Sometimes what you want changes, and you realize you're not right for each other anymore. That's bullshit, Ross said, his voice hard with anger. People don't just grow apart after 24 years. Something happened. Ross, I started. No, Dad. Don't give me some sanitized version. We're adults. We deserve to know the truth. I looked at Marta, asking a silent question. She closed her eyes and nodded. Your mother met someone else, I said. Someone she has feelings for. We've been trying to work through it, but we can't. You're having an affair? Amelia's voice was barely a whisper, but it carried the weight of a shout. It's not that simple, Marta said. It sounds pretty simple to me, Ross said. You cheated on Dad. I fell in love with someone else, Marta said, her voice steady despite the tears streaming down her face. I didn't mean for it to happen, but it did, and I can't pretend it didn't. So, you're leaving Dad for this other guy? I'm leaving because staying would be unfair to everyone. Your father deserves someone who loves him completely, not someone who's torn between two people. And we deserve parents who don't give up on their marriage the first time things get difficult, Amelia said, standing up abruptly. I need some air. She walked out of the room, and a moment later we heard the front door slam. Ross stood up too, but instead of leaving, he came over to where I was sitting. I'm sorry, Dad, he said, his voice thick with emotion. This sucks. Yeah, I agreed. It really does. He hugged me, and I held on to my son like he was an anchor in a storm. Are you going to be okay? He asked. Eventually. What about Christmas? Are we still going to be a family? We'll always be a family, Marta said. Just a different kind of family. A broken family, Ross said bitterly. A changed family, I corrected. Broken implies it can't work anymore. But we're all still going to love each other and support each other, and be there for the important stuff. Like what? Awkward graduation ceremonies where you and Mom have to sit on opposite sides of the auditorium? Like whatever you need us for, Marta said. We're not going to let our problems affect our relationship with you and Amelia. Too late for that, Ross said. But he went over and hugged his mother too because, whatever else was true, he loved her. Elena and Carlos had been silent through this whole exchange, but now Elena stood up and wrapped both Marta and me in her arms. I'm so sorry, mijos, she said. So sorry it came to this. We are too, I said. What can we do? Carlos asked. How can we help? Just love the kids, Marta said. They're going to need their grandparents more than ever. Always, Elena promised. I went outside to find Amelia sitting on the porch swing, wrapped in one of Elena's quilts, staring out at the snow-covered fields. Mind if I sit? I asked. She scooted over to make room. We sat in silence for a while, watching the wind blow snow off the tree branches. I'm angry at her, Amelia said finally. I know. I'm angry at both of you, actually, but mostly her. That's okay. You're allowed to be angry. How could she do this to us? To you? People make mistakes, sweetheart. Even good people. Even people who love their families. This isn't a mistake. This is a choice. She chose someone else over us. She chose someone else over me. She didn't choose him over you and Ross. It feels the same. I know it does. But it's not the same. Your mom loves you more than anything in the world. That hasn't changed. Then why is she destroying our family? It was the question I'd been asking myself for weeks. Why wasn't our love enough? Why wasn't the life we'd built together worth fighting for? I think, I said carefully, your mom got lost somewhere along the way. I think she forgot who she was outside of being a wife and mother, and when she met this other person, he made her remember, or made her think she remembered. So it's our fault? For needing her? No, baby. It's nobody's fault. Sometimes marriages just end, even good ones, even ones with people who love each other. Do you still love her? Yes. Does she still love you? I think so, but not enough to stay. Amelia started crying then, the kind of deep, wrenching sobs that come from the bottom of your soul. I pulled her into my arms and held her while she grieved for the family she'd thought she had, the future she'd imagined, the security of knowing her parents would always be together. What's going to happen to us? She asked when the tears finally stopped. We're going to figure it out. All of us. Together. It's going to be messy and complicated, and sometimes it's going to hurt, but we're going to figure it out. Will you be okay, Dad? Really? I will be. It might take a while, but I will be. I love you. I love you too, sweetheart, more than you'll ever know. We spent the rest of Christmas Day pretending to be normal. We ate Elena's elaborate dinner, played board games, watched old movies. Everyone tried to act like nothing had changed, like the conversation in the living room had been a bad dream we could all wake up from, but everything had changed. The easy comfort of family gatherings was gone, replaced by careful politeness and the kind of forced cheer that comes from people trying not to upset each other. Conversations stopped when certain topics came up. Laughter felt strained. Even the simplest interactions carried the weight of what we'd lost. That night, as we were all getting ready for bed, Marta knocked on my door again. How do you think they're handling it? She asked. About as well as can be expected. They're hurt and angry and confused, but they'll be okay eventually. I hope so. They will be. Kids are resilient. I keep thinking I should have handled this differently. Found a way to spare them. There was no way to spare them, Marta. Once you made the choice to leave, they were going to get hurt no matter how we told them. She nodded, accepting the truth of it. What happens now? Now we go home and start the process. Lawyers, paperwork, dividing up 24 years of accumulated stuff. I don't want to fight about money or custody or any of that. We won't. We'll be civilized adults who put our children's needs first. And Jake? I looked at her, this woman I'd loved for more than half my life, and tried to find some trace of the girl I'd married. She was still there, buried under layers of guilt and confusion and middle-aged disappointment, but she was there. I hope he makes you happy, I said. I really do. Nick, I mean it. Life's too short to spend it with the wrong person. If Jake is the right person for you, then I'm glad you found him. Even though it cost us our marriage? Even though. She kissed my cheek, a soft brush of lips that felt like forgiveness, and goodbye rolled into one. Thank you, she whispered, for being kind about this, for not making it harder than it had to be. We loved each other once. That has to count for something. She nodded and slipped out of the room, leaving me alone with my thoughts and the weight of endings. Tomorrow, we would drive back to Minneapolis and start the complicated process of untangling our lives. Tomorrow, there would be lawyers and real estate agents and difficult conversations about who got what. Tomorrow, I would have to figure out how to be a single man again after 24 years of marriage. But tonight, I sat by the window and watched the snow fall on the Wisconsin countryside, and I tried to remember all the good times. The laughter and the love and the moments of perfect happiness that had made the pain worth it. Every marriage tells a story. Ours had been a good story, even if it didn't have a happy ending. And sometimes, that has to be enough.